What starts out as the best day of Isra Sablani's life soon turns into a nightmare. While posing for her wedding photos in Beirut's Saifi Square, a massive explosion tears the city apart. It's just before 6 p.m. on August 4th, 2020, when an uncontrolled fire breaks out at one of the hangars at the port of Beirut in Lebanon, seemingly after welders' sparks flew while they were fixing a hole in the wall. 9 firefighters and a paramedic are deployed to the scene, but they have no idea what the true extent of the disaster is. Their initial belief is that the hangar contains fireworks, but when they report back to the command center, the team tells the fire chief something is amiss. Then, a gigantic explosion rips through the foreshore of Lebanon's capital city. The blast killed 218 people and injured 7,000 more. Hundreds of thousands would be left homeless. Hangar 12 housed much more than just fireworks. It contained over 2,750 tons of highly explosive ammonium nitrate. At about 6:07 p.m., the warehouse fire started sending plumes of smoke and soot billowing from the roof of the building. Eyewitnesses say it was followed by a burst of light and showers of smaller sparks, which looked like fireworks. Less than a minute later, a massive blast erupted, setting off a bright ball of fire. A shockwave moving faster than the speed of sound tears through downtown Beirut. Footage on social media showed a white dome engulfing large parts of the city, basically water vapor forced out of the air by the shockwave. A red-brown haze of smoke and ash followed it. Experts would later concur that this haze of red-brown smoke was the strongest indicator of an ammonium nitrate explosion. The shockwave blew out windows at the Beirut airport terminal about 5 miles from the port. The blast was so intense that it was heard as far afield as Cyprus, about 125 miles across the Mediterranean. Seismologists at the U.S. Geological Survey equated the force to that of a 3.3 magnitude earthquake. In fact, it was so powerful that a team from Sheffield University estimated that the blast was equal to 1,000 to 1,500 tons of TNT, roughly a tenth of the intensity of the nuclear bomb which ripped through Hiroshima. Structures at the epicenter, surrounding warehouses, and grain silos housing about 15,000 tons of grain were flattened. Several dock ships were blown out of the water and damaged by the explosion, including the 5-star Orient Queen. The 393-foot-long passenger cruiser capsized due to the force of the blast, killing 2 crew members. It also carved out a 460-foot-wide ground crater, which immediately filled with seawater, laying waste to Hangar 12 and most of the port's critical infrastructure. The cataclysmic explosion, with a radius of about 1.85 miles, is believed to be one of the largest non-nuclear blasts recorded to date. The streets of Beirut were visibly shrouded in carnage. Entire building blocks in nearby neighborhoods and business districts in the city's north were leveled, including in the nightclub district. Uprooted trees, overturned vehicles, collapsed roofs, and metal structures lay buckled and twisted in the wake of the explosion. The powerful blast resulted in the electricity supply being knocked out, which dealt another devastating blow to rescue efforts. According to reports, the devastation was so severe that military bulldozers were used to clear roads for firefighters and ambulances. But hospitals were desperately overwhelmed by the blast and had to turn away injured people due to the sheer number of wounded. According to the World Health Organization, several hospitals were destroyed by the explosion, and at least 20 other healthcare facilities were severely damaged. Most injured people were treated for secondary trauma to the upper extremities due to shattered glass. St. George Hospital, located less than a mile from the blast site, had also been destroyed, but was still treating people on the ruined pavement outside. Other damaged medical centers continued providing care to people in car parks by flashlight as the human toll of the explosion escalated. Even so, many more wounded had to be turned away due to capacity. The blast reportedly damaged more than 200,000 households. It's believed many of the displaced found shelter through aid agencies like the Lebanese Red Cross, the hospitality of fellow Lebanese, as well as friends and family. The state, however, has been widely criticized for being absent regarding relief initiatives for disaster victims. Protests broke out in the city days after the explosion, condemning the government's lack of response. The inferno blazed for more than 7 hours, enveloping the city with a thick black smoke. It filled the air with the smell of sulfur and burnt rubber, caused by massive amounts of nitrogen oxide released from the ammonium nitrate explosion. According to reports, the hangar was used to store jugs of oil, kerosene, and hydrochloric acid, 5 miles of fuse on wooden spools, and an estimated 15 tons of fireworks. The perfect storm just waiting to happen. Yet despite the highly flammable inventory, the warehouse had shoddy electrical works, no smoke alarm, and it was not even fitted with a sprinkler system. But Hangar 12 also housed a dangerous secret: 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, which had been haphazardly stored in bags since 2013. Ammonium nitrate is relatively cheap to purchase. It is commonly used in the agricultural sector as fertilizer and in the mining sector as explosives for quarrying. Several terror attacks have used the chemical, including Timothy McVeigh's 1995 Oklahoma City federal building bombing and the Irish Republican Army's 1990 London bombings. The question on everyone's mind was, why was so much ammonium nitrate stored so close to the residential suburbs of Beirut, where an estimated 10,000 people lived a mere mile from the warehouse? And who was to blame for the devastation? Well, it all started in 2013, when a ship owned by a Russian businessman made its way from Georgia to Mozambique, docking at the Beirut port after more than a month at sea. The Rosas merchant vessel was carrying 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate on board when it docked in Beirut, reportedly due to technical problems. But the ship would never leave the port again. According to the vessel's former captain, the owner was experiencing financial difficulties and had hoped to pick up some cargo in Lebanon to make some extra money before headed to Mozambique. But the additional load carried too much weight, and the crew refused to take it on. This led to the ship being unseaworthy and impounded for unpaid port duties. The owner abandoned the crew without paying their salaries or the port duties. The vessel and its 4 crew members were forced to remain on board for 11 months because of immigration restrictions. They were eventually released on compassionate grounds in 2014. The explosive cargo was confiscated and transferred to Hangar 12, where it remained until that fateful day in August 2020. In the more than 6 years that the highly combustible cargo lay dormant and unsecured in Hangar 12, a flurry of emails was sent by concerned port authorities to government officials, but nothing was done. The first batch of emails was sent sometime in 2014 after the ammonium nitrate was first offloaded. The former director of Customs sent the emails to an urgent matters judge, cautioning against the dangers of housing the highly explosive chemical at the port. But he never heard back. According to Al Jazeera News, one of the emails asked the Marine Agency to re-export the cargo immediately due to the dangers of it being housed in unsuitable climatic conditions in the hangar. The letter even suggested authorities sell the chemical load to the Lebanese Explosives Company. A 2019 report sent to the Lebanese government on the threats posed by the combustible cargo reportedly fell on deaf ears. Officials ignored the port authorities' warnings, even after security risks were exposed due to a hole in the wall of Hangar 12. It's since believed that sparks from welders fixing this hole led to the devastating explosion. While civilians were trying to piece together their lives amid the destruction, which is believed to run in excess of $15 billion. Lebanese authorities arrested more than 20 port and customs officials following the blast. President Michel Aoun promised the nation a full and transparent investigation would take place, but rejected calls for international assistance with the probe. Less than 6 days after the explosion, the government resigned amid violent protests, calling for transparency and accountability for the blast. Judge Fadi Sawan was appointed to lead the investigation. Still, it would prove to be a slow and frustrating task because all members of parliament have immunity from any criminal prosecution by law. Not a single top official has ever been prosecuted successfully for crimes in Lebanon, despite corruption and mismanagement being rife. But in December 2021, Judge Sawan charged the interim Prime Minister Hassan Diab and 3 former ministers with negligence over the port explosion. In a nasty turn of events, however, 2 politicians he indicted had him removed from the probe, claiming he was not impartial. Civil society groups have since lobbied for immunity to be lifted so justice can prevail. With no signs that the local investigation will move forward, a civil case was filed in the United States in July 2022 by the Swiss-based organization Accountability Now. They are seeking $250 million in damages for the survivors and hope to uncover new evidence to propel the Lebanese probe forward. Then, in April 2022, Spanish authorities arrested a 43-year-old Portuguese man on the instruction of Interpol and the Lebanese government. Jorge Morera was charged with terrorism and causing the death through the use of explosives. Morera is believed to have ordered the ammonium nitrate while employed with the Mozambique explosives factory. A company spokesperson said the chemical was ordered in 2013, but was never delivered. They were shocked to hear the explosive material had languished in a dilapidated warehouse in Beirut until the explosion. Morera has since been released, but is not allowed to leave Spain until his extradition hearing. If found guilty, he could face life imprisonment. In January 2023, the judge responsible for the investigation issued new charges against 8 officials after the probe had been stalled for nearly 13 months. He ordered the release of 5 people detained shortly after the blast in 2020, including port officials, a welder, and a contractor. As for the bride from the viral video, Isra Sablani, well, she also happened to be a doctor and provided medical assistance to the injured in her wedding gown shortly after the blast. A month later, the newly married couple moved to the United States. More than 2 years after the disaster, the scars of the devastating explosion remain visible as the reconstruction of more than 62,000 residential spaces and over 20,000 businesses and buildings destroyed continues at a snail's pace. Today, a statue made out of broken glass, twisted steel, and other materials from destroyed homes and buildings stands 8 feet tall near the explosion's epicenter. The figure of a woman holding a sword serves as a reminder of the 218 people killed that day. A broken clock at her feet still shows 6:08, the exact moment of the explosion. Watch this episode next if you found this video interesting. Please add a like and leave a comment if you want to support the channel.